Hi, welcome back to Healthy Families, the podcast where we explore practical tips and expert advice to help families eat well through every stage of life. I'm Kathleen Alleaume.
And I'm Jess Burvill. And we've got a packed show for you today where we're going to be talking all about protein. What is protein? Why do you need it? And the important question that everybody wants to know, how much do you really need?
And we're also introducing a new segment today called Meal Makeover, where we show you how to transform a classic family meal into a healthier dish. So let's get started with protein. Now, Jess, I don't know about you, but I'm really seeing, observing and feeling that we are obsessed with protein, just a little.
We are obsessed. I mean, every time you go to the gym, people are drinking protein shakes, and you go into the supermarket and the shelves are full of all these products that are highlighting how much protein are in them. We've got high protein pizza bases and high protein ice cream, high protein bread. It's everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly the nutrient du jour. So why do we need it? What's so important about protein? Why is it so highlighted at the moment?
Protein's one of three what we call macronutrients, which are those three big groups of nutrients we get most of our energy from in our diet. And the other two macronutrients are carbohydrates and fats. Now, protein's got lots of really, really important roles in our body, and probably the most important one is that it's used to help build and repair muscles and bones and even our skin and all of our blood vessels and other tissue. Now, maintaining strong bones and strong muscles right throughout life is actually really, really important, and in particular as we get older. Now, we want to make sure we've got nice, strong bones and strong muscles so that we can keep active and keep moving and living like an active and, healthy life right through to a long age, and also help to prevent things like falls and fractures.
But we tend to lose that muscle mass, which is the all-important function of protein. We tend to lose that muscle mass around about the age of 30, which it's around 8 to 10% per decade. And I think as you reach the age of 60, it's a lot more rapid. So I think that's the most reason why protein is important, because it is helping you to preserve that muscle mass as we get older.
That's right. I mean, in conjunction with resistance training exercise, of course. And I think, because we do reach that peak muscle mass and bone mass in our sort of earlier years, I think by the time around 30, that's when you start to see that decline. And also as we get older, our bodies actually become less efficient at making muscle. So you need to eat more protein as you get older. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of attention on protein at the moment, in particular around this area of helping us to remain healthy and strong throughout life.
So let's talk about which foods contain protein. We get protein from both, of course, animal sources and plant-based sources. So for starters, there's meat, chicken and fish, so your animal-based sources. So a bit of a fun fact. Meat and chicken actually pack the most protein per gram. And let's not forget about dairy products, for instance, cheese, milk and yogurt, all the good stuff. And for our plant-based friends, we've got soy products like tofu or edamame, all great options. And of course, eggs, another fantastic source of protein, whether it's scrambled, poached, boiled, however you like them. Of course, legumes like beans and lentils, kidney beans and chickpeas. We've got seeds and nuts. They're also great for adding crunch to your meals, but they really do give you a nice protein boost. And finally, let's not forget whole grains, like quality carbohydrates like quinoa and oats. These also contain plant sources of protein. So with all this variety of foods, you would think that we will be eating enough protein. But so the question is, how much do we really need?
Yeah, look, this is a question that's actually a bit of a hot topic in the nutrition world at the moment, to be honest. If we look at our
controversial one, I think as well.
It is a bit controversial, and there's new emerging research in this space. And if we look at the dietary guidelines, they tell us that we should be aiming for just under about a gram of protein per kilo per day. Now, so if you took a typical person who weighed around, say, 70 kilos, that means they need to be getting a minimum of around 70 grams of protein per day, which really, when you think about it, it's not that much. Now, based on sort of more recent evidence, what I tend to advise my clients that I see is that they should be aiming ideally for at least 1.2 grams, ideally closer to sort of that 1.5 grams of protein per kilo per day. So if we took that again, to our average 70 kilo person, they're going to be looking at around 100 grams of protein per day, give or take.
Yeah, that's a big jump from 70. That's an extra 30 grams.
So, give or take a little bit either side. But of course, the amount of protein you need does vary depending on the individual and what's going on in your life and how old you are. And there's a few audiences who do need even more protein than that. I'll give you a couple of examples. So first of all, as I mentioned before, the older people, because we become less efficient at building muscle as we get older, your protein requirements actually increase. So if you're you're about 70 or older, you definitely need to be eating more protein in your diet. Another key group would be athletes. So anyone who's doing very high intensity training, or if you're a power athlete where you're required to, do strength training, maybe you do weightlifting or, some of these other power based sports, you're definitely going to have much higher protein requirements. And then again, we've got our pregnant and breastfeeding women, of course. So pregnant women need a lot of protein because their body is actually helping that unborn child to grow. And then again, when you're breastfeeding, you need all that extra nutrition, which you're passing on to your child. So yeah, as I mentioned, the protein requirements do vary depending on who you are and what's going on in your world.
And I think just to add to that point, as we mentioned earlier, as the age of 30, there's about an 8 to 10% decline in how we lose our muscle, and that does go at a more rapid rate once we hit 70. So I think protein emphasis at the moment is around weight loss as well. So if you're looking at, someone who is, on a weight loss journey, and let's just say they're following, for example, a calorie restricted diet, and then they may lose weight at a rapid rate, what's often goes with that weight loss per se, not only is, say maybe the fat deposition, but also the muscle decline. So I think adding that extra amount of protein is going to help with things around satiety, perhaps an appetite. So I think that's really important if you're following those kind of more calorie-restricted diets, because what you don't want is that degradation in muscle, because muscle, as we know, is a much more metabolically active tissue, and that's what's actually going to help you sustain that weight loss, and it's actually going to help you burn more calories at rest, right?
Yeah, that's right. So if you took two 100-kilo people and one of them had a very large amount of muscle mass on their body, their energy requirements are going to be much higher than the person who has that lower muscle mass. And I can also speak to having seen firsthand people in the clinic where I work who've come in and they may have lost that large amount of weight. And if they haven't been doing it the right way by emphasizing having enough protein in their diet and or including that resistance and weight training in their diet, what they have seen is that they've actually lost a huge amount of muscle, and they're now sitting below the recommended amount of muscle for someone of their age. So yeah, it is really important if you're on a weight loss journey to make sure that you are meeting your protein requirements.
Okay, we'll be right back after this quick break.
Eggs are bad. Eggs are good. Cut carbs, boost carbs. Ugh, with so much conflicting information, what's truly healthy? Healthyfood.com cuts through the noise to deliver credible, science-backed nutrition advice from qualified dietitians to ensure you make the best decisions for your lifestyle. A subscription to Healthyfood.com gives you access to thousands of easy, delicious, healthy recipes, meal plans, and more. Visit Healthyfood.com to start your journey to better health today.
Okay, we're back. So we've talked about where to find protein and the variety of foods, and particularly whole foods where you can find protein. We've talked about how much ideally you need each day, depending on what stage of life you are, whether you're an athlete, you're pregnant, or potentially looking to achieve and maintain a healthy weight. But what's not often taken into consideration is the timing of your protein intake. And I think that's just as important because we often see that most people might jam-pack a lot of their protein maybe towards the evening or their dinner, and I think it's really important to consider how you're spreading that evenly, ideally, throughout the day. So I'll give you an example. So let's go back to that 70-kilogram person that we mentioned before, like aiming for that roughly 100 grams of protein a day. So if you split that up, for example, between breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're looking at around 25, say, to 30 grams per meal. And then we can fill the gaps with snacks, and looking at around a snack containing around 5 to 10 grams of protein. So that is ideally how you be getting your protein intake, is spreading it evenly throughout a day. So general rule of thumb, I say around 20 to 25 grams or even up to 30 grams per meal is ideal breakfast, lunch and dinner, and around 5 to 10 grams in a snack.
Yeah, that's right, because it gives your body access to protein right throughout the day. And it's also important to keep that in mind if you're doing, say, resistance training. You want to be including a good source of protein around your training, either before, during, or afterwards. Now, if we think about some of those different meals, if we look at breakfast, for example, if you were listening in episode 1, you would have heard us talking a little bit about breakfast. And for many people, this can often be a meal where it's hardest to meet that protein requirement of, say, 25 to 30 grams of protein. So, Kathleen, what would be some ideas for our listeners of how they can, increase their protein or meet their protein requirements at breakfast?
Yeah, I mean, I often talk about Greek yogurt because it is one of the many yogurt varieties that is often higher in protein. And of course, mixing that with, say, muesli or oats, I mentioned before, whole grains, because they also give you those plant sources of protein. So a combination of, say, yogurt, whole grains, and of course nuts is going to be quite a protein-packed breakfast, particularly if you are following a plant-based diet. So if you like your eggs, of course, combining that with whole grain toast. And a vegetarian style breakfast would be a baked beans and whole grain toast, and you could do smoothies with plant-based milks or even nut butters, and of course adding some fruits or vegetables to that too. So there's lots of different ways for breakfast that we can look in. It's not just focusing on protein per se, but looking at other whole foods that give you that plant sources of protein, and of course healthy fats and carbohydrates. And breakfast is, I still think, the most important
meal of the day.
But anyway, we beg to differ that one sometimes. But yeah.
And what about some snacks? Could you give us some ideas of snacks which have got sort of that 5 to 10 grams of protein that you mentioned?
Yep, I think Greek yogurt, again, comes top of the list. And, of course, adding that with some nuts. We're looking at, say, hummus-based, legume-based dips. So, for example, hummus, or even those dried chickpeas or fava beans. My kids love those because they're like kind of chips, but they're crunchy. And I just give that to add some extra protein to their lunchbox. Boiled eggs are a good one, and cottage cheese has been so trendy lately. It's actually got quite a bit of protein, and you can mix that again with a carbohydrate source. You're looking at whole grain crackers, even if it's got seeds and nuts added to it. That's just, looking at ways to incorporate more protein into your snacks. So I think just by rattling off those, it's, we are looking at quite a wide variety of foods there that's covering all bases. But I think what I'm taking from this is, it's not just about the protein, it's looking at the whole base food, because the protein tends to look after itself. Because, I think what we're going to talk about next, I know you are, because you're dying to talk about protein bars. Because, yes, we can look at a snack and you can go to a protein bar, not a problem. It's convenient. You can put it in your tote bag. You can carry them around and you will get your 20 to 30 grams in a protein bar. But Jess, do you think they're really healthy?
Yeah, look, I've got thoughts. I got thoughts on both those things, actually. I think if we're talking about those protein bars that you see marketed as having sort of 20, 30, I've even seen some that have got 45 grams of protein in them. I think you have to have a think about, why are you having that? What role is it playing in your diet, and what else is in that product? Because a lot of the time when you have a look, read the label and see what's in the product, and yeah, sure, it might have a good amount of protein in it, but it also has a lot of other stuff in it that I don't really think you want to be eating. A lot of artificial, sweeteners and fillers and things like sugar, alcohols, and not a lot of other nutrition. Now, if I give you an example there was a particular protein bar I picked up the other day, and it had, I think it had 20 grams of protein in it, but it also had around 1,000 kilojoules.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, which is about 240 calories, I'd say, and not a lot of other nutrition. Now, if you were to compare that to, say, a Mars bar's got about 900 kilojoules. A small fries from McDonald's got about 800 and something kilojoules. So you're actually consuming a huge number of kilojoules to get that 20 grams of protein. Now, there are a lot of other healthy snack ideas that you could reach to, which you're going to get the same amount of protein, but for a lot less kilojoules, and you're going to get a lot more nutrition in it. And one example I give to a lot of my clients is something like a high protein yogurt. There's quite a few options available these days, and you can buy a yogurt for about $2, $2.50. It's got 15 grams of protein. There's one brand that's got 20 grams, I think. And it's about 100 calories, which is about 420 kilojoules. And it's got a whole lot of other nutrition in it, like calcium and vitamin D. and probiotics. So this is an example where you could actually have 2 yogurts for the same amount of protein or more protein than you're getting in that one protein bar, and it's cheaper and much better for you. So whilst things like protein bars, sure, every now and then they can be a convenient way or a sweet treat to get protein, I wouldn't be relying on them as your main source of protein. You should always be trying to look to whole foods because you're going to get a lot more nutrition and bang for your buck, essentially.
Yeah. So it's not just a sugary snack pretending to be healthy,
Well, they are. At the end of the day, these things are actually just confectionery, a lot of them, and they really have not much nutritional value.
So what about people following like a plant-based diet? So meaning whether you follow a vegan or a vegetarian, something I often hear is that I'm not hitting my protein requirements. Like, what are your thoughts around that? Like, can this be true that if you're feeling like you're minusing food groups, whether you're following vegan or vegetarian, where you might cut out certain things from your eating pattern, how can you obtain the protein goals?
Yeah, anyone who's following a plant-based or a vegan diet does need to pay a little bit of extra attention to what they're eating to make sure that they are meeting their protein requirements and other requirements such as iron and vitamin B12. And there is a little bit of a myth out there. Some people believe that you can't get all your protein requirements from a plant-based diet. And really to understand where that myth came from, probably need to break down the way sort of protein and protein absorption works. And protein's made up of building blocks called amino acids. Now, there's a number of amino acids that our body can't actually produce itself. There's 9 of them. And we need to get those amino acids from food. Now, animal products such as meat and dairy have those 9, they're called essential amino acids, and have them in a very similar ratio and proportion and concentration to what we have in the human body. Now, plant-based foods also have a lot of these essential amino acids, and some of them have all of them, particularly things like quinoa is a good example, and soy-based products. But they might not have them in the same concentration or ratios as what our body needs. So what that means is you need to consume a wide range of plant-based products in order to meet your protein requirements. So you absolutely can meet your needs on a plant-based diet. You just need to eat probably a little bit more, and you need to eat a really wide variety of foods.
And coming back to our most important point that we mentioned earlier is spreading that throughout the day. So again, it's just not about the protein, because if your diet, your plant-based diet is inadequately planned, such as a vegan or a vegetarian, it's just not about the protein. As I mentioned, it's, you're missing other nutrients like, B vitamin, vitamin B12 or iron, calcium or zinc. And these are nutrients that are generally found in higher amounts in animal foods. So again, if you're focusing on the whole foods, it's not just about the protein. The nutrients do tend to take care of itself. So you're getting all the added vitamins and minerals that I mentioned before. And at Healthy Food Guide, we have loads of meal plans for vegetarians and those following a plant-based diet. It gives you lots of recipe options and ideas and, ways that you can adequately plan out those meals.
Absolutely. Check it out.
So let's wrap up with one final question. Is there such thing as too much protein? Now, if you ask me, I would say absolutely. So if you're chowing down more protein than your body actually needs, you might end up actually overdoing it on the kilojoule side of things, or missing out on the good stuff. So from quality carbohydrates with the fiber and some healthier versions of fats. So it's often if your focus is protein, and let's just say you're getting that protein mainly from animal-based sources, it tends to be void in fiber, because of the carbohydrates, and obviously the fats are more of a saturated type. So, and there was also a scare with having too much protein could potentially be strain on the kidneys, but that myth has been busted. It's only if you really do have kidney issues do you really have to watch the protein intake. So what will be the cap, Jess, you think? So we mentioned around 1.6 grams is ideal for that, 70 kilo person. I mean, you wouldn't want to go over how many grams?
Yeah, look, I think where the research is still a little bit inconclusive on this, but kind of once you're getting above sort of that 2.2, 2.5 grams per kilo per day, you're probably not going to see much more benefit. I mean, the only reason someone would really be eating that much in the first place is they're probably trying to gain muscle mass. You see a lot of maybe young guys or athletes trying to do this, but there does come a point where incremental protein is not going to result in more gains. You're just really, as you mentioned, going to be adding, extra calories. And then I think also, just to go back to your point about the diet, there's been a bit of a trend over the recent years for things like keto diets and carnivore diets, which are really paleo diet, very high emphasis on eating a lot of protein, particularly animal-based protein. And as you mentioned, that can result in you underdoing it on really important nutrients like fiber and really getting way too much saturated fat in your diet, which we would never recommend.
Okay, we're just going to take a quick break. We'll be back shortly.
At Sanitarium Health Food Company, we're on a mission to make healthy eating easier. From grab-and-go brekkies to clever snack ideas and budget-friendly dinners, our plant-powered recipes have you covered. At sanitarium.com, download our free 12 before 12 cookbook. It's a fun food adventure that teaches kids skills for a healthier life. And whether you're feeding toddlers or fueling teenagers, helpful nutrition advice is just a click away. Sanitarium. Eat well, live well.
Okay, we're back, and it's now time for our new meal makeover segment, where we take a family favourite meal and show you how to make it more nutritious. And we're kicking off today with everyone's family favourite, fish and chips. So Jess, why did we pick this meal, and how are we going to make it not only nutritious, but you need to tell me how for it to be delicious?
Yeah, look, fish and chips is one of those meals that is super tasty. But if we're looking at it from a nutrition perspective, it's perhaps not the best
thing.
Yeah, perhaps not the best thing on the menu. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of the first ones is that it's really high. It's really what we'd call an energy dense meal. It's got a lot of kilojoules and calories in it for the amount of food you're having. So if we were to take a typical meal of, say, a big piece of, deep fried fish and a nice serve of chips alongside that and some tartare sauce to go on top, you're looking around probably 4,000 kilojoules or about 1,000 calories. Now, that's actually quite a lot. That's nearly, for some people, that's going to be getting close to half their daily energy requirements. So really, really packing a punch there. The meal's also quite high in sodium. So a typical meal might have close to, say, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, which is, again, half your requirement for the day.
Is that including the extra chicken salt that you might add?
Oh, it depends on how much you put on, Kathleen. Also quite high in saturated fat. In particular, that's coming from your tartare sauce. And obviously the meal is deep fried. And it's also low in fiber. So you're not getting a lot of fiber from the meal because there's no vegetables to speak of unless there's a little bit of parsley garnish on top, perhaps. But anyway, that's a couple of reasons why we picked this meal, because there are actually some really easy swaps you can make to add more nutrition to the meal and make it more balanced without, taking away that delicious taste.
Yeah, we want to make it delicious. So how are we going to do that?
All right. So step one, what would be the first thing you would do, Kathleen?
Okay, well, let's start with the fish, of course, protein. Now, tell me, how much protein would you get in a decent fish and chips meal, given that we're talking about protein?
Well, I guess it depends on the size and the type of the fish. But let's say an average piece of fish, which is going to be around sort of that 200 grams, because you do get quite a big piece of fish in the takeaway shop. You're probably going to be getting up somewhere around 25 to 30 grams of protein in that piece of fish.
Okay, protein sorted, but it's just how we do the fish, right? So, okay, let's take the old battered variety and let's grill it, of course. I mean, it's, try to ask for grilled fish when you're at the takeaway store, but how you do it at home, I mean, under the griller, I mean, you might even do it with your own breadcrumbs or, things. I mean, that's where I start. And I would oven bake it too. Sometimes I even put them in the air fryer, which actually really helps give them a nice crunch. And also, if I'm talking about the potato part, I put those in the air fryer too, or I'll just bake my own. But at the takeaway store, I mean, it's really hard to get away from the deep fried fish. So, I mean, would you do a grilled fish and salad? Yeah, but that's no fun.
I think a lot of the takeaway fish shops do seem to offer grilled fish these days. It might be a bit more expensive, but it really is a much healthier, more nutritious option. It hasn't got all that extra fat in it, and also, it's going to have less sodium too.
Yeah, but what about the chips? I think you can have, because it's like a dare I say, treat food. You can have your grilled ask for it grilled. You're saving there. You might get your deep fried chips. You might share it with the family rather than getting your own serve. You might share a large with the family, and then you're adding a salad as well. So you're getting a more balanced variety on your plate rather than just opting for the protein with the fries and that's it, and the sauce.
Yeah, I guess with the chips, the two options would be, as you say, if you are doing a takeaway, getting a smaller portion. So even if you halve the portion, you're going to halve the amount of calories and fat and sodium, etc. Or if you want to do fish and chips at home, you could do something like oven chips. There's actually some quite healthy options available in the supermarket.
In the frozen section.
In the frozen section, you can make your own chips by cutting up potatoes or even sweet potatoes, or you can roast some potatoes too. And even in the air fryer, as you were mentioning earlier, that's a really a convenient way to cut down the amount of the fat that you need to cook them.
All right, so if we grill the fish, bake our own chips or make them, or get the frozen varieties, which is convenient, and we add some salads, how are we reducing, like what are we saving here? Like how much have we improved our fat content, reduced our calorie intake, obviously added more fibre? What numbers are we looking at?
Yeah, look, we've actually made some pretty big improvements here. And actually the one other thing we didn't mention was swapping out the tartare sauce. And that little tiny amount of tartare sauce actually really does pack a punch when it comes to calories and saturated fat. Yep. So potentially we'd be looking at swapping that out for something like a yogurt-based tzatziki. And to add extra flavor as well, you can look at things like a squeeze of lemon on top as well to give you that nice extra bit of flavor. But yeah, by making all of those changes, we've actually managed to cut the kilojoules by about a third. So this upgrade, what we call the upgraded meal, has got about 2,500 kilojoules or 618 calories, which if you compare that to the original meal is a saving of around 1,500 kilojoules actually, and close to 400 calories. We've also managed to reduce the sodium down from nearly 1,000 milligrams right down to about 130, 140 milligrams. So that's a huge amount. We've cut it by I think it's 85%. We've also managed to cut the saturated fat down a little bit as well by those changes we made to the chips. So probably taking it from, say, 10 grams down to 5 grams as well. And actually another tip, if you wanted to increase the amount of calcium in your meal, you could also look at choosing a piece of salmon instead of, say, a white fish like a cod or like the typical type of fish you would get. And the other benefit of including a piece of salmon is that salmon's really rich in those omega-3 healthy fats, which we know are important for heart and brain health. So that could be another easy swap to do.
Okay, that's a pretty simple swap. We like to call them simple swaps. And, of course, at Healthy Food Guide, we call them how to upgrade your meal. And we don't do huge tweaks. It's just making those small tweaks that do really add up with a bit more nutrition bang for your buck.
Exactly. We're not trying to, this isn't about completely changing your diet and not having those foods that you enjoy. It's about the little swaps that make the big difference to your diet to make it more balanced and adding in more nutrition where there are opportunities to do so.
And still delicious.
And still delicious because it's got to taste good.
Well, that's it for today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like and share it with your friends and family. We look forward to seeing you next time on Healthy Families. Bye.